Hey, everybody, this is Shawn Poole from Letters to You. And we're really excited today to be talking to Bill Teck, the producer and director of Stevie Van Zandt, Disciple, which we just got to see yesterday. Awesome film.
Thank you.
An epic film, Bill. Clocking in at over 2.5 hours. And, I got to say, it's not surprising, given that you're covering the life and career of Stevie basically from childhood through present day. But why don't we start with how exactly did you get involved with this project? How did all this come about?
I had been following Stevie's career. There was a music writer where I grew up in Miami at the Miami News named John Marlowe, and
Okay.
he was a Stevie fanatic. And around the time Stevie put out Men Without Women and Voice of America, and he just right, this is the most important artist around. He's the new Dylan, and I'm an impressionable 13-year-old kid. I'm riding my bike to the record store. I'm coming back with my Men Without Women, and then I was already a Springsteen fan. I'm trying to figure out, is this is Miami Steve, but he has a different name. What's going on? Um, and then I went back and listened to Southside, got into that, and I just followed his career my entire life. And I've been a documentarian for a while, and I had approached him several times. Started in 2006 the first time, then in 2014. After I'd had some success with this Bogdanovich documentary that I did about the late Peter Bogdanovich, may he rest in peace. And I kept
Great
getting
film, by the way. I just saw it the other day. It's my first time, and I love Peter Bogdanovich. I didn't even know about this until, I got your name and checked you out and was like, wow, where's this guy been? But anyway, yeah, great film.
very much. I've been reading you, my whole life. So this is a thrill for me. So thank
Awesome.
you. Yeah, man. So I approached TV and kept getting word back. We're aware of you. Thank you. If we'll be in touch, we'll be in touch. But I just kept at it, and I think I just wore him down.
Well, I'm glad you did. Thank you for your perseverance. So this is very much your film. Like I noticed that like Stevie's name isn't even in as like a producer. Now obviously he definitely gave you sort of carte blanche. I mean, he sat down for extensive interviews. There's a lot of amazing footage in here. Some of it we've never seen before as fans. But this is your baby. And it's like your Peter Bogdanovich documentary, One Day Since Yesterday on steroids, I would think, in terms of the work you had to do to put this all together. Can you talk a bit about that, like the workload itself and making this happen?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. You know, Stevie's career is so vast and
Mhm.
it's so multifaceted. And I wanted to do something that was, hot and fast. And, here's just the Stevie Van Zandt, just the greatest hits, the things you need to know. But it wouldn't have done justice to the guy, which is he's
Right.
so depth and he's had so many careers and the length, it's an epic. Um,
It is.
I tell people like, listen, it's almost like if Barry Gordy had prevented the assassination of JFK. Like
That's a
it's going to
great
be,
description.
it's a long thing. Is he stops for a minute and then he's off in South Africa and he's trying to, raise awareness about apartheid and working on behalf of Nelson Mandela. He continues to work for, and then all the things, the first streaming show and on cable, the first satellite radio station that's branded, his record label, his philanthropic efforts, and it's so much stuff there. Plus the career, the music,
Yes.
the,
Yes.
fr- the friendship with Bruce, the E Street Band, the love story with Maureen. It's a lot of story. So I didn't want to make
Absolutely.
something that would have shortchanged it.
Well, you definitely did not do that. And the fact that you managed to get it down to 2.5 hours is awesome as well. It definitely is exhaustively researched. And obviously, you came into the project as a Stevie mega fan already, which helped. But was there anything that was like new territory to you specifically that you had to do some extensive research on, or?
I was very lucky. I met another Stevie fan who's also in the business, Rob
Mhm.
Cotto, and
Mhm.
David Fisher made the film with us. And Rob was as passionate as I was and a great kind of archivist researcher. And he was able to find the wedding. We had always read in Rolling Stone, oh, Bruce is the best man, as Jesse
Yes.
Malin. a movie. And Little Richard performed the ceremony, and I think Little Milton played downstairs in a room that not a lot of people went to. That part always gets left out of the story, but the wedding band was from The Godfather, and Percy Sledge sang When a Man Loves a Woman. But you couldn't see it. And Stevie, we need the wedding. He's like, that doesn't exist. It's gone. It's lost. And Rob kind of made it his mission to find it. And he did find it at the bottom of a Rubbermaid box of VHSs somewhere in the office in the back. He also found the only footage of Stevie with Nelson Mandela. If you read his book, he says, there's no photos of Nelson and I together. Well, we found the only frame of them together. And
beautiful.
And then a wonderful friend of the production, Tom Zibney, who I've loved his movies, and I've been a fan of his. And I only, got to know him through emails just because we needed maybe some footage of the E Street Band. And he was kind enough to say, hey, I'm going to slip you this footage that nobody's seen of Bruce and Southside and Steve. Maybe this could be in your flick. And it's like, what? Did Tom Zibney just give it to the generous gentleman? And
absolutely.
And really very sweet man. He got us over the hump with some amazing footage that I think nobody's really ever seen, stuff that was just in the vault. So it's...
Yeah, at first, I know I've seen some stuff on YouTube, and I thought, okay, they just did a great job of cleaning this stuff up, because that's the other thing I want to say. Even if you've seen some of this stuff in some form before, everything is beautifully restored. You obviously took your time and must have spent some resources as well to get this in such beautiful shape. But that's amazing news that it's actually probably footage that hasn't been seen before. If Tom gave it to you, I'm sure it hasn't been seen before.
It was so generous of him, and it was it was the stuff with having a party. We've seen the Bob Gruen is an amazing filmmaker and photographer, Bob Gruen, and that stuff was on YouTube. The stuff that Richard Neer narrates. Where they I guess Epic Records put that promotional film together for the Jukes live show from the Pony. Right. But then that other stuff, who knew that even existed? I had never seen that, and we were all just like, what? And that happened close to the end, as you know, when you're making these things. Sometimes the best stuff is just close to the end. There's just a lot of unique footage in this film, I think, for Stevie fans and for in a larger sense for the E Street fans.
Absolutely. So you've got obviously a very impressive roster of folks who agreed to be interviewed for this film, and while in general an interview subject like Bruce Springsteen, he can be a relatively rare interview to score. Of course, it's not that surprising to see him sitting down readily to talk about Stevie, his close friend, longtime bandmate. But with some of the other celebrities in the film, like Bono, Paul McCartney, Eddie Vedder, while they certainly come across in the movie as big Van Zandt fans, I would imagine it might still have been at least a bit more difficult to nab some of that interview time with them, just given their own hectic schedules and everything. Did you come across any particularly interesting challenges in scoring any of those interviews for the film?
It was wild. I think a lot of people have been wanting to talk about Stevie,
That's great.
And it was just touching. I mean, John Landau at the end of his interview came over and said, hey man, thanks for doing this for Stevie. And everybody seemed that way. Eddie Vedder, I had read in Rolling Stone magazine at one of the Bridge benefit concerts, Neil Young's Bridge benefit, covered I Am a Patriot. And I was like, wow, Eddie Vedder's a Stevie fan, and that's so cool. And then as soon as YouTube existed, got to look that up. And I saw that. I was like, this is so crazy. So when we got there to interview Eddie, I don't know if a lot of that group of his peers, the guys in the Seattle scene, knew the E Street and Stevie stuff. He certainly does. And so I don't think he'd an opportunity to talk about this music with a lot of people. So we got there and they were like, Ed, hard out at 4. Whatever you're doing, you're in your car at 4 p.m. I was like, okay. Well, we were there at 4 a.m. just talking and hanging out with Steven. And so it was that was the experience on down the line from Peter Gabriel to Jim Allen at the Hard Rock. Everybody was like, we would like to talk about Steven Van Zandt. And so it was very meaningful because I set out to, he really kind of let me make my own film. I said, if we're going to do this, you just let me do it. But And if it would have been critical, we would have had those fights. But you find out the guy never takes the cape off. He lives really in his music. All that he's rock and roll is the most important thing in the world. Maureen feels that way. He feels that way, and so it winds up being about that journey.
Right.
And he has these long-standing relationships, whether it was Zoe or Darlene, good friends. It's quite beautiful to see a guy that lives his life with such a singular purpose.
It is. I think, this applies to being a Stevie fan in general, but also in watching this film. If you like are feeling down and about life in general and need some inspiration, I don't think you can find anybody more inspiring in terms of how to just grab life by the throat. And Stevie is always doing something, always trying something, and always there's an element of hope and positivity at the center of what he does. And it's beautiful to see. And capturing so many of the people you did on film, expressing their, love of that is just it's a total fan fest. And just it couldn't have come along at a better time. In a way, it comes along at a somewhat odd time, since as far as I know, Stevie's non-E Street Band work appears to be kind of on hold for the moment. Obviously, he's touring in Europe and will continue that through the summer and into the States with Bruce and the E Street Band. Might there have been any special reasons behind releasing the film at this particular time, or did it just come about that way?
Oh, we had tried to get it out way before. We actually finished principal photography in 2019,
Oh,
right
wow.
before right before the pandemic. Pandemic hit, and at that time I wanted to do it almost as a two-parter, because I thought,
Hmm.
well, and then we kind of came around to the idea of let's make an old school rock and roll documentary. That's
Hmm.
just like different parts. It's really just one big behemoth. We have the chapter headings to try to give people a little break because it's so much stuff. If you don't have them,
Right.
people just get lost. Um,
Understood.
but but we tried to get it out for a long time, and we was finding the right distributor during the pandemic was difficult. And we finally found a home at HBO Docs, and that was the dream. So to wind up
Hmm.
there with that very serious documentarians, um, and then I think it was just we just wanted to finish up quick. So we
Right.
Stevie we wasn't even in the early cuts. He was like, "Nah, use me in file footage or from podcasts." We finally convinced him to sit for an interview. As you can see in the movie, it's a fairly recent interview, and
Hmm.
then we were able to cut everything together. Filmed one of his more recent performances that he did last year in Jersey at Red Bank,
Right.
and then we were good to go and just kind of finish up and get out to the races. So it just kind of the timing just worked out.
That's great. Fantastic. Uh, One or two more quick questions. The footage from Stevie's lost 1982 Men Without Women film looks beautiful. Do you know if a wider release of that complete film might possibly happen at some point?
It's I don't know. I love the
Right.
line that Jay Cox, Scorsese's frequent collaborator and the critic from Time Magazine, when Jay says, maybe it's all out there somewhere, like the lost footage of the Magnificent Ambersons. I love that line. Who knows?
Yeah.
This was something that Rich Russo found at the EMI. I guess their vault somewhere, and
Hmm.
it's I mined it as much as I could. We have Nana Lento,
Oh
Stevie's
yeah, it's what's
grandma.
in there is fantastic, especially for those of us who've never gotten to see a frame of it and just have heard about it as this white whale out there.
I didn't even think it existed. I was amazed as anybody. And I remember looking at the Men Without Women album, which is so much of that is frames, the gatefold and the
Right.
materials from that film. And
Hmm.
I would have done anything to see that film. And then, to have a little bit of access to it and see some of these people so young, like Gary Gersh and
Hmm.
Stevie walking around New York it's it was a treat that he didn't frown upon me kind of stripping it for parts.
Yeah.
All the film itself, I would love to see it get a wide release, or maybe even maybe there's something more creative that he'll think of possibly doing with it because he's a force,
Yeah,
man, and he's only become
definitely.
a better director and writer with as the years go by.
So Stevie just recently announced on his social media his plans to publish yet another book. He's got, in quotes, hopefully this year, focused on defining and explaining his political views more clearly than ever before. Maybe he'll be interested in pursuing some kind of cinematic or TV adaptation of that book down the line. You seem to be the perfect candidate for it, Bill.
I'll do it. I'll do it. I volunteer. He's a trip, honestly. The guy, it's funny because for being a fancy rock star, he's also a mensch and a sweet man. And I was really honored to get to tell his story.
Well, I'm glad that you got to do it. Thanks again for your perseverance. The result is an amazing film. If you are a Steve Van Zandt fan, as I am, and as so many of our readers are, you are in for a treat once this comes your way. Check it out as soon as possible. And thanks again, Bill, for your time and your perseverance with this.
Thank you, Shawn. It's a treat for me because I've been reading you for years and go on in the mornings, letters to you. So it's a real treat. Thank you.
Right back at you. Thanks again. Take care.
You too.